What is up, everybody? Solomon here. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day. I'm going to get through this news fairly quickly, and then I want to dive a little bit deeper into FedNow, their proposed liquidity tool, some Ripple comments, and some verbiage that is being rolled out across the board here as far as a parallel system that is to run in tandem or at the same time as the legacy system. So my wife actually switched my microphone, I can see, from the right to the left side of my laptop. So you guys let me know if you like the right or the left Twix. So, all right, Ripple's next ODL corridor, maybe between Japan and South Korea. There was an interesting transaction tracked on the XRP ODL liquidity tracker today. Utility scan noted on BitHum with South Korean won as the source or origin fiat, and the recipient exchange was BitBank. Received the transferred funds in Japanese yen. This suggests that there may be a corridor under development between the two countries. We will see how that plays out. I like to wait for official announcements. So, also today, lawyers in the nation's capital can accept cryptocurrency as payment for legal services as long as the fee agreement is fair and reasonable, and the lawyer can safeguard the virtual property. The District of Columbia Bar said in an ethics opinion. Hong Kong launched a $15.5 million subsidy plan to encourage fintech adoption. We'll go over the Beijing thing here in a second. Ripple again criticized Swift for the postponement of ISO 20022. And then also, real quick as a disclaimer, I do not send out emails. If you receive an email from me and you are not a Patreon that requested me to send you an email or we're having a discussion, I do not send emails. I do not ask for money. I do not ask for investments, period. If you see something like this, it is a scam. Please direct message me. I generally am pretty decent about getting back to them within a day or so. I've actually replied to 2 in the past day. All right. Thank God we're over that. So Vitalik Buterin says Ethereum will scale to 100,000 transactions per second with Ethereum 2.0 layer 2 scaling. I'm not going to go into depth into that. I want to, and honestly, I'm a believer in Ethereum. I have seen Ethereum mentioned all over the place, very many documents. Their smart contracts capabilities as far as what they're doing across the board, as well as just the sheer amount of tokens that run on the Ethereum blockchain. But I like to see development, and I like to see planned development that actually pans out, and I like to see dates hit. So whenever that actually occurs, I will be all for it. So, but as we can see, Ethereum did a nice little pump today, which just goes to show you what news does for every other asset except for XRP. Beijing unveiled a distributed ledger tech plan today as well. Municipal government aims to turn the capital into both a national and a global blockchain hub. I'm also not going to go overly in depth into this. I will post everything on the Patreon though. Cardano's Emergo and Travalo bookings platform team up to boost real-world ADA adoption, which is good news for Cardano and ADA. All right, now, this is where we get into the actual video content here. So this is from Bank of Canada. This is yesterday or this morning, early this morning. And this really sparked me on kind of a little bit of a wildfire research exercise today. All right, so I'm going to go through this. And this is all about building a parallel system. This is all about FedNow, and this is about the liquidity tool. So if you read into this right here, payment systems are inextricably linked to the implementation of monetary policy. How the bank sets overnight bank rates, the demand for reserves in a standard model of monetary policy implementation is generated by how uncertain bank payment flows affect the use of central bank borrowing and lending facilities. 24/7 payment settlement has the potential to change both these factors and alter the demand for central bank reserves. Nostro and Vostro, you don't need to have the liquidity reserves held in these siloed corporations with everything's trapped. For example, demand for reserves could be a function of whether the central bank provides access to its lending facilities only during standard operational hours, or always. Now, I want to get down into note 2 here. So note 2, if a payment shock occurs when banks do not have access to this facility, then banks need to factor the cost of having insufficient funds in the after-hours market into their marginal benefit of an extra dollar of reserves. That traditionally has not been modeled in a framework because the shocks only matter if payments are settled. Settlement occurs 24/7. Now we have bullet note 2 here. If we scroll down to bullet note 2, for example, the U.S. Fedwire Fund Service operates until 6:30 p.m. and the National Settlement Service operates until 5:30 p.m. The Federal Reserve is considering expanding their hours to 24/7 to provide a liquidity management tool to support 24/7 real-time gross settlement service. We also see down here, parallel payment systems exist in several jurisdictions. This, to me, this parallel payment system ideology is really more so going to be about the distributed ledger technology payment systems, more so hopefully settlement systems, and the legacy institutions. And I'm going to dive more into this here because I do believe that that is going to be the case across the board, at least in the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to see these systems run in tandem or at the same time together. All right. I always pay attention to old Ripple insights as well. This is from 2017. Federal Reserve Task Force. Ripple improves speed and transparency of global payments. Ripple was obviously on the Faster Payments Task Force, which was initiated by the Federal Reserve. Let's just go back a little bit here for those of you that may not know, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper. After 2 years of work, so this begun in 2015, the Federal Reserve released its Faster Payment Task Force action plan to bring faster payments to the United States, highlighting Ripple's ability to underpin the next generation of cross-border payments. 320 stakeholders. Ripple played a leading role in establishing this future vision for payments. Early in the process, I was elected to serve on the steering committee to represent tech companies and to provide expertise on emerging technology and blockchain. And we will see who I was in a second here. One of the task force achievements was to establish a set of effective criteria for faster payments to meet the market demands of 2020 and beyond. And we are in 2020 right now, ladies and gentlemen. The framework calls for improved cross-border infrastructure. It's exactly what Ripple's trying to do right now, and that's the perfect use case for XRP, along with many others. Ripple put forth the interledger-based solution that enables improved messaging and tracking for real-time payments, standing out as the only proposal focused on solving today's friction with cross-border payments. And as we know, the interledger does not care. It is currency agnostic, it is value agnostic, it is distributed ledger and cryptocurrency agnostic. It will use whatever is the most efficient or whatever is chosen to be used. Now, what's next here is very important, everybody, because that's what I'm talking about right now. What's next is interoperability and liquidity. What has Ripple been doing for the past 2 to 3 years? They've been building up liquidity rails across the board, across the world, and they have been focused on interoperability. What are they doing with PayID? Interoperability. Doesn't care. PayID, all you need is a web server, and you can interoperate between any payment network, as long as you have that server. You have Venmo, you have PayPal, it doesn't matter. So, and building on the momentum, Global Payment Steering Group to help define the rules and formalize standards. We know Ripple is a member of ISO 20002 now, or 20022 at this point also. I believe Dilip Rao was one of the authors of this, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Potential Federal Reserve actions to support interbank settlements of faster payments. This is Ripple's submission to the U.S., to the Fed. So this is the 13th of December, 2018. And I get really interested when I read down here. This is 24/7, 365. Potential liquidity management tool is what I'm interested in. And Ripple answers some questions here, and it's very interesting, some of the answers that they give here. This is a question by the Fed. Will there be sufficient demand to support the development of this tool? We do expect sufficient demand to justify the exploration and development of the tool. Would the tool need to be available 24/7, 365, or alternatively during certain defined hours on weekends and holidays? While financial institutions may have such tools today, they will need to be operable on a 24/7, 365 basis with appropriate controls and safeguards. Could this tool be used for purposes other than to support real-time settlement of retail faster payments? Possibly, but we do not have comment in this regard. This actually, and this is about ubiquity here. So now I found a Swift document that dates back to 2017 as well. And this is from Swift. Swift states, in a hypothetical future scenario, a potentially viable way to enable central bank money settlement for cross-border transactions, leveraging distributed ledger technology, would be if central banks were to issue fiat currency on the distributed ledger and, via the establishment of interledger protocols, provide central banks settled cross-border payments via atomic settlement. What does that sound like? Now this talks about, this document is like super deep here. Swift has also experimented with distributed ledger technology. This is via R3 in the proof of concept to deliver real-time nostro-vostro account reconciliation. So this is dealing with GPI here. They're still dealing with Nostro and they're still dealing with Vostro, and they talk about netting as a requirement to still, not be able to instantaneously settle because you need to be able to net. That's nonsense. If you don't know what netting is, or at least one example of it, if Bank A has $9 and owes it to Bank B, and Bank B has $8 and owes it to Bank A, netting would essentially mean that the bank with a leftover dollar would be the only one to transmit money. Fantastic, but that's not solving the problem. The problem is when you get into these awkward situations where you're dealing with these inefficient corridors, first off, and you can't instantly settle because there's no easy way to bridge fiat to fiat. Even with central bank digital currencies, there won't be an easy way to bridge fiat to fiat. All right, this is from I believe it's from this is from a Hungarian banking institution, NPPA. Actually, I'll go up to the top here so you guys know exactly who this is from. This is New Payments Platform. Actually, I'm sorry, this is Australia. So, interoperability of cross-border payments. You want to hear a tie-in to PayID. Many of you have been asking about PayID with NPP. That's Australia. They have a PayID system. Well, we know that the new PayID isn't directly tied in, but here's your tie-in to NPP for Ripple. The need for a cross-border instant payments ecosystem has been recognized by many countries. Regional schemes or global initiatives, so it's not a regional initiative, global initiatives such as Ripple or Swift GPI have been developed to respond to this demand. However, in an era where open services, choice and flexibility are paramount, the industry needs to avoid the pitfalls of the past and ensure interoperability of these platforms. They are talking about interoperability between RippleNet and Swift GPI. I wonder how they're going to do that. Again, we see parallel, and this is interesting here. The intermediaries, including systems and/or people that are part of the legacy processes, may act in parallel with DLT/blockchain solutions. In some cases, those intermediaries may even accelerate the adoption of distributed ledger technology by implementing a blockchain solution themselves. And this is through the RAND Corporation. The RAND Corporation I had never heard of, but they have some extremely heavy hitters on this board of directees and the board of trustees, I should say. All right, payment netting, I went over that. This is Talindus here. Talindus also talks about a parallel platform. If you're not aware, Talindus runs a validator node on the XRPL. You can look that up yourself. Talks about Ripple transaction protocol. Talks about select the right blockchain for each use case, which is what this is all about. It's all about the use case, and the use case that actually solves a current problem, at least for now. Blockchain DLT applications, and you see here agility, the ability to move freely, and agile development, parallel run. All right. This is through OMFIF, and they are a gigantic organization as well. I believe they deal with, I'll tell you real quick, since I'm on here. OMFIF, Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. And what they're talking about here, DLT will integrate into other technologies, one step at a time, one platform at a time, but also getting all the players on board and making sure that in the next 5 to 10 years, you will still need to work with the old system. That does not mean that the new system and the digital assets will not completely obliterate the old system. It just means whenever these institutions are so built up, you look at SWIFT. They've been around for 50 years. Do you think that an institution like that is ingrained into society and ingrained into the financial society of the globe is just going to go away? Or do you think that they have a little bit of pull? They have a little bit of pull, but they don't have as much pull anymore as they did 5 or 10 years ago. But they're going to interoperate. They're going to run parallel. It's all about choice, everybody. It's about interoperability, at least in the beginning. And then we all know what's going to happen. Interoperability will obviously continue to move forward, but those legacy institutions that have not adapted are going to basically die. This is a big investment and a leap of faith towards the future in the end. All parties will take part in this, all banks, but also all end users and clients. From this point of view, we are very much aware this transition phase will take a lot of time because you will need to work in parallel, the old world and the new world, for many years to come. And this, I'm not sure when this was posted. This has to be more recent, I believe. Hang on, let me see if I can find it for you all. 2020. It is not that old. So you see where we're at, everybody. However, that doesn't mean where we're at is, we've got 10 years to wait. It just means that these programs that the legacy institutions and their systems are going to run in parallel with the new system, which we kind of knew that anyways. All right, this was interesting, kind of off topic for 1 second, but this just talks about Mojo Loop. The Gates Foundation is Mojo Loop. Uses components from the Interledger protocol. Every transaction must be confirmed and verified through the issuance of a secure token. Now we talk about it again, R3. As we think about expanding the scope of access to central bank money, it is hard to ignore parallel revolutions in the form of a tokenized financial ecosystem. While the primary function of a CBDC, at least as discussed in this paper, is to facilitate payment, its structure is often a tokenized asset. Blockchain systems have enabled a wide range of tokenized assets, and more recently on Corda, we are seeing an emergence of tokens such as a tokenized bond, equity, or fractionalized piece of real estate, which could settle against a CBDC. Let me blow this slide up for you guys real quick so you can see it. A tokenized financial ecosystem. Payments with Corda, we see CBDC as unit of account or as store of value. We see transfer of value with central bank money. And we see a tokenized financial ecosystem with digital assets, but in parentheses, but not money. This is like friggin' wild that this is wild that I have like people look at me like I'm crazy when I talk about this in my normal everyday life. I mean, because it's literally, the verbiage is there. It's being built in front of us. It's just amazing. All right, this is Federal Reserve again. 24/7, 365 RTGS service with integrated clearing functionality to support faster payments and a liquidity management tool that would enable transfers between accounts held at the reserve banks on a 24/7, 365 basis. to support services for real-time interbank settlement of faster payments. Now, the old article that we saw before made it seem like this liquidity management tool was literally just them keeping their office hours open 24/7, 365. Now it actually sounds like it's a real tool. And I'm curious what that tool might be. This talks, I mean, this Fed document is very, very insightful as well. Alleviate liquidity management issues for banks engaged in RTGS-based faster payments. Move funds between accounts at reserve banks during hours when traditional payment and settlement services are currently not open to allow liquidity to be moved when needed to an account or accounts used to support real-time settlement of faster payments. This is interesting. I am almost done, everybody. To the FedNow comment team, I would like to thank you for listening to the community banks and moving forward with your participation in the development of a faster payment infrastructure. Let's get down into this. Timing. There is a great deal that needs to be done. I am convinced with the current timeline, financial institutions will have already been pressured by customers to provide some type of real-time payment service. This would negate the benefits of FedNow. Consideration of a more aggressive timeline should be considered. Try to multi-thread the settlement services, third-party interfaces, and directory services in parallel. They are going to join all systems. That is what this entire Internet of Value is about. It's what it's always been about. Everything being connected. Implement a phase 1 directory service and couple it with existing debit card network. Debit rails for real-time payments. Phase 2 would be a new FedNow network geared towards business settlements, not payments, settlements. Interoperability with other real-time payment networks should be considered as a day one deliverable. We may all remember the days when we had to look back at the ATM, look at the back of our ATM cards and hunt down an ATM that used our network? ? Enough said. Centralized directory services. Who will host such services? Feds or a private provider? This is one of the most important functions. Cost of directory services. Registration access points. If integration with the Clearinghouse Real-Time Payments Network or Zelle is included in the scope. This is a friggin' fantastic response document here, by the way. There should be consideration for allowing the same flexibility as ACH. Should the switch be centralized with the feds or be structured like the credit/debit card network with multiple processors? I am in favor of a centralized Fed switch. I believe the desire is to have interoperability with the clearinghouse's real-time payment rails. I understand that by the time a Zelle or TCH comes through our core processor, the transaction cost will be more than 50 cents. I would be very interesting to see what a normal transaction cost is through TCH or Zelle. And if it's more than 50 cents right now, because that may be very, very interesting to look into. 24/7 transaction processing systems. Let me talk about parallel here. Hang on one second, everybody. This is, sorry, I know it's like a deep dive of all this crap, but we already said it. Third-party interfaces and directory services in parallel. This was interesting too. NASHA has a very strong regional payment association. If you're not aware, NASHA, Ripple is on in the NASHA alliance, and that NASHA also put out that document that has since been deleted that shows Ripple at the base of the payments. I believe it was payments. It may have been settlement stack across the board. And another option will be to extend FedNow governance directly to NASHA. So that is extremely insightful. I thought that document was great. I'm not exactly sure who it was that posted this, if it was a commenter to the FedNow or if it was an overseer of FedNow relaying messages back to the team. I want to say the latter, but I'm not positive. So we see Dilip Rao here. Great move. Hashtag FedNow will drive the transformation to real-time payments infrastructure around the world, both domestic and cross-border. At Ripple Mission, the Internet of Value. And I don't think it gets much more clear than that, everybody. Take everything that you see in this space with a grain of salt. But there will be winners in the digital asset space. There will be digital assets that are winners. Do not let anybody tell you differently. I try to follow the money. That seems to have worked throughout history, and that seems to not be working in the digital asset space. But I'm patient, and I'm going to be here for a while. I will continue putting these videos out. But one thing's for sure, based on this video and based on everything I've ever seen, it's all about working in tandem with the current system for now. And there's one company I know that has been doing that more so than any other company in blockchain. And that company just happens to utilize one of the most, if not the most efficient digital asset out there. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a good evening. Later.